friends, welcome to the 238th session of Legal Empowerment Through Interaction lecture series. In this journey, we came across different speakers, and I'd say one who is so dear to our heart, thanks to Justice Mustak for introducing him to this platform, is Sri Anil Malhotra sir. He's back again, and today we have something which doesn't sound very familiar to many of us, not just for the lawyers, law students, and even for the judges. Anti-injunction suits, a critique with special emphasis on Family Courts Act. And to introduce the subject, we have Justice Mohammad Mustak himself, and we are privileged with the presence of Justice Ramushan sir and all of you wonderful participants on this Sunday morning, a fine Sunday morning. Let us make the best out of it by being part of this platform proactively, and let us interact with the speakers and other persons who are present here, who's in the know of things. May I request Justice Mohammad Mustak sir to deliver the introductory remarks.
Good morning.
Morning, sir.
To all. My esteemed brother, Justice Ramakrishnan. He sweeps us and cleaning us from Chennai, sitting as a head judicial member of NGT. I hope his tenure will bring a lot of fruitful results in Kerala, where we badly need any of our empowerment friendly initiatives. Well, when yesterday Mr. Anil Malhotra asked me to chair the session, I have no hesitation because chairing a session is quite easy. Not become a speaker, just to share the thoughts on the subject. Well, as I said earlier, Kerala and Chhattisgarh share many things in common. The large populace, immigrant populace, and the issues governing them. But Kerala has not advanced much in using the private international law for the cost of litigation. But for the pioneering efforts made by the Anil Malhotra and his team in Chandigarh, they were able to have some results using private international law. This is where the lawyers has to present themselves. When you have enough and opportunities surrounding to them, we must be able to take those opportunities for the benefit of litigants. Because often our ignorance results in denial of justice to the litigant. So unless you have an exposure to different regimes of law, fields of law, you will not be able to identify the cause of a litigant and formulate the same before the court and ultimately lead for a result. The litigant's the lawyer's duty is primarily is to identify the cause and take up in a way which would enable a litigant to have the fruits of justice from the court. I think this platform has provided a lot of opportunity, at least for the young lawyers, to have exposure to different dimensions and fields of law. And this is one of such opportunity thrown up to them. Please, young lawyers who are the leaders of the bar, who are the future leader of the bar, try to know nitty-gritties involved in the legal field. The law is ever evolving, and our society is always depend upon lawyers to evolve legal issues and ultimately bring happiness in the society. In this given circumstances, I just want to briefly introduce anti-suit injunction. Anti-suit injunction, of course, is one of the species of injunction. But in specific relief act under section 41, it put a lot of negative formulations. It says when court can refuse injunctions. That is only relief part. The court cannot grant injunction in certain circumstances, but section 41A carves out an exception in order to avoid multiplicity of proceedings. A jurisdiction is conferred to court under different circumstances. We have to distinguish between action in personam and action in rem. The court cannot assume jurisdiction in action in rem unless it's conferred by statutory portion. Universally accepted principle. The territorial jurisdiction or action in rem, where the status of the subject is a consideration for the court to assume jurisdiction. But action in personam is difficult for the court to decide on the jurisdiction or not. We come to the later part on the relief. First, court has to have jurisdiction to decide upon the cause. Especially in the matters of having the foreign element is always a complex question for the court, and a complex question. It depends on many factors. The jurisdiction may be based on domestic. Jurisdiction is based on the law of celebration like marriage. Jurisdiction based on the habitual residence. Jurisdiction is based on the titles of the mobile properties, etc. It confers jurisdiction on the court. Now, there are two essential issues which I would like to highlight. One is in a matters related to marriage, where the celebration might have taken place in the domestic jurisdiction, but parties might be residing elsewhere, the foreign country. So they might have acquired domicile in that country. The domicile itself confers a jurisdiction. This is one of the principles under the private interest law. To invoke the form of that court. So both court will have a concurrent jurisdiction, like the place where the marriage has taken place based on the law of celebrations, where that court is also having jurisdiction. Similarly, the court where the parties are residing, I mean, they have acquired domicile, they are also have jurisdiction. This always creates a friction. Now the CPC certain level answers this question under section 43, where the binding effect of the foreign judgment. But anyway, the principles of private and national law do not prevent a foreign court from acquiring foreign court assuming the jurisdiction based on the domicile, even though celebration as marriage has taken place in different jurisdictions. Similarly, in the matter of custody of the children, also the foreign court may have jurisdiction, and also the factual situation sometimes bring into the jurisdiction of the local court. So there are numerous circumstances that conflict could arise in the family law. The another circumstances is made in the arbitrations, where the different courts may attempt to have invoke the jurisdiction based on the place where the contract was entered, based on the place where the subject matter of the contract was situated, etc. So these give multiple options for the parties to invoke different jurisdictions. These are the legally bound situations or circumstances where the court may be able to invoke multiple court may have a jurisdiction. But in those circumstances, court may be very reluctant to grant and a relief of injunction because multiple court may have a jurisdiction. So court themselves guard granting such relief, evoking section 45. But there are situations where there would be likelihood of misuse, bottom flopping. And just to harass a person, and some forum may be likely to be chosen by a party at litigation. This will result in grave hardships to a litigant. In that circumstances, the court would be justified in granting injunction. So essentially, the anti-injunction suit related to the action in personam, where the court may have jurisdiction to grant the writ, but may not exercise its power, taking note of the concurrent jurisdiction of other court. But there are circumstances where court may have to issue it because court know that other opposite litigant is simply for stopping other jurisdiction and to harass the litigant. In that case, court may have to grant relief. So this is what how the various judgments which may ultimately Malhotra may point out speaks about granting relief. The anti-suit injunction, of course, is a major appeal, first of all. In fact, in a recent one of the case, I have to deal with such situation where the court mixed up granting a relief of jurisdiction. I mean, granting the relief and mix it with the jurisdiction. Court has jurisdiction, but whether it can grant relief or not is a matter to be decided in an appropriate manner after hearing both sides. But where the court refused to entertain suit as though such suit is not made enough, that's a wrong approach. In fact, I relied on the global intents written by Anil Malhotra and his brother Ranjit Malhotra for deciding the case. So we had to deliberate. Of course, I hope Malhotra would deliberate on the matters related to jurisdiction in entertaining anti-suit injunction and what circumstances a relief can be granted in such a suit. With his opening remarks, I thank everyone for listening.
Thank you very much, Mustaq sir. Before we go to Anil Malhotra sir, let us offer our pranams to all those who were on this platform directly or indirectly, all our teachers, and on this Teachers' Day, our salutations and pranams to all of them, those who are present today and those who aren't, because it was because they shared or they contributed their time and knowledge that this platform is still going on and we have all these interactions without any interruption. Over to you, Anil Malhotra sir.
Thank you, Shyam. Honorable Justice Mushtaq, Honorable Justice Rameshan, fellow listeners, lawyers, colleagues, and students. The topic on which I will talk about is something which Justice Mushtaq has very, very rightly summed up. And for the benefit of those who do not know, his brief two-page judgment in 12 paragraphs rendered on the 9th of April 2021 in a matter in the Kerala High Court summed up the whole proposition so beautifully that a volume could be written on it, but he was so brief, so precise and so concise that he flagged the issue, dealt with it summarily, and at the same time lent a very clear perception of thought that relief and maintainability are two issues which a family court ought not to be confused with. So my effort in this perspective is to understand that anti-injunction suits are something which have to be understood from the point of view of jurisdiction, as Justice Mushtaq very rightly pointed out, which is inception, then pendency, and then aftermath. So these are three stages or three phases of an anti-injunction suit, which I would divide for the reasons of a better understanding of the matter. Now, to appreciate from the perspective of the process, the maintainability, we have to go to the CPC first. So, as essentially we are all ingrained to understand, Section 9 of the CPC says courts to try all suits unless barred. So, a civil suit or a suit for an injunction or a suit for an anti-injunction, a negative injunction, is maintainable by virtue of Section 9. So maintainability, res, maintainability, res, and maintainability is ingrained from section 9. Then the next proposition, which is very relevant, is section 10. Now, section 10 says stay of suit. So, very basically, it says that no court shall try a suit or proceed with the trial when the matter is directly and substantially in issue in a previously instituted suit between the same parties or any of them who claim to be litigating under the same title, and whether the suit is pending in the same or in any other court in India having jurisdiction to grant relief, or is in any court beyond India established or continued by the government and having jurisdiction or before the Supreme Court. It's a very vast definition. So section 10 extends the parameters of an anti-injunction suit to a very, very far off distance. Then the third part, or the third provision, is contained in section 13 CPC when foreign judgments are conclusive. So when you have a foreign judgment, because this is an issue which has been dealt by the Supreme Court in one of the matters where an anti-injunction was granted, matter still proceeded. Court said in execution we will see under section 13 and then we will see. So when is a foreign judgment conclusive is dealt with, and the court says when a foreign judgment will not apply. It is not by a court of competent jurisdiction, it is not on merits, it is against Indian law, it is opposed to natural justice, obtained by fraud, etc., etc. Then section 19. A suit filed under section 19 by a defendant, by a plaintiff, claiming to have cause of action in one of the matters, the High Court has said suit under anti-injunction suit is not maintainable under section 19. So these are the broad provisions of CPC which really talk of the provisions of civil procedure. Now, I have coined a nomenclature for an anti-injunction suit which gives you an import of the meaning in current times today. An anti-injunction suit is what I would call a virus suit. So what do? You inject a virus, or you inject a mechanism to stop a proceeding through an anti-injunction suit. So what is it? It's actually a virus suit. So you are injecting another suit into a pending suit to stop the suit. So you are injecting a virus, not coronavirus, but still a virus in one way. So this is a coinage. I have thought of it so that we can understand what is an anti-injunction suit. Now, this is a proposition which has been wholly developed through judgments. But to understand the judgments and the import of Justice Mushtaq's judgment by the Kerala High Court, let us first see where will this suit go, how will it go, and what are the principles by which this suit will be governed. Now, I went through this drill in the Delhi High Court, where I faced an anti-injunction suit in a matter, in a child custody case, where parties were contesting on the issue of custody of the children. So there were pending proceedings in the US, and there were pending proceedings or initiated proceedings subsequent in point of time at Delhi. Now, there was a family court dealing with custody issues in the US. There was a guardian judge dealing with the custody issues in the family court under the Guardian and Wards Act. And in this perspective, the anti-injunction suit was filed in the Delhi High Court. Now, this was quite a surprise to me, because the issue was, how would Delhi High Court deal with this matter? Now, for the benefit of those who do not know, Delhi, Bombay, and Calcutta are suits of the original British Charter, by virtue of which they have original jurisdiction. So, unlike Kerala or Punjab and Haryana, the High Court of Delhi, Bombay, and Calcutta have original jurisdiction, which means civil suits can be filed directly in the High Court of Delhi. So the suit for anti-injunction was filed in the Delhi High Court. Now, when I appeared in the matter, I straight away took an objection that this suit is not maintainable and this suit has to be returned under Order 7, Rule 10 and to be presented before the court, that is the family court. Now, it is in that perspective that the court went into the detail of the matter to decide, first of all, why is a anti-injunction suit maintainable? Why is it to go before the family court? The issue raised before the family court was that a suit for an anti-injunction is not covered by the Family Courts Act. A suit for an injunction is covered by a family court, but an anti-injunction is not covered by a family court. And therefore, it was said that the jurisdiction of the High Court as a civil court is not barred. This was the proposition canvassed. It was referred to a larger bench, and ultimately the issue was sorted out. But to understand that, let us first look at Section 7 of the Family Courts Act. Now, Section 7 of the Family Courts Act says that subject to the jurisdiction, subject to the other provisions of the Act, a family court will have and exercise all jurisdiction exercisable by any district court or any subordinate civil court under any law for the timing in force in respect of suits and proceedings referred to in the explanation. So everything in the explanation was within the domain of the family court if it was within the jurisdiction of the family of the civil court. So what is in the explanation? Explanation A, suit or proceeding regarding marriage or nullity. B, suit or proceeding declaring the validity of a marriage. C, suit or proceeding between parties to a marriage with respect to property. Then is the crucial and the crunch. A suit or proceeding for an order or injunction in circumstances arising out of a marital relationship. So the proposition canvassed before the Delhi High Court was that a suit or proceeding for an injunction does not include an anti-suit injunction. So this is what the proposition was. Now going further, Section 8 of the Family Courts Act says that where a family court has been established, no district court or any other subordinate civil court in Section 7 exercising jurisdiction will have any jurisdiction regarding any suit or explanation, the suit or proceeding referred to in the explanation. So Section 8 created a bar of jurisdiction by debarring a civil court, the district court, meaning High Court also in Delhi, from entertaining any matter which fell within the domain of the family court under Section 7. And then it also says that if there is any proceeding referred to in the explanation, then such proceeding will be transferred to the family court once it is established. Then Section 10 talks of procedure generally. So Family Courts Act says that under Section 10, CPC will be generally applicable, but it gives freedom to the family court to govern its own procedure. Then Section 14 exempts the application of the Evidence Act. Any document can be taken in evidence. And this is broadly what the Family Courts Act says in a sense. Now, I will come to Section 41 of the Specific Relief Act, Later, as Mr. Mushtaq very rightly pointed out, it is a negative provision. Section 41 says an injunction cannot be granted. So, Section 41 identifies 41A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. So, these are all instances when an injunction should not be granted. Now, in this perspective, let us first look at the judgment of the Delhi High Court in Jasmeet Kaur versus Navdeep Singh. This is a reported judgment of the Delhi High Court 2017 SCC Online DEL 12511. It is a judgment dated 20th of December 2017. Now, in this case, I had moved an application in the Delhi High Court under Order 7 Rule 10, and I had prayed to the court that as a defendant, I had prayed that the suit should be dismissed as non-maintainable before the High Court and it should be transferred to the family court, because it was a suit for an order or a proceeding arising out of an injunction in circumstances of a marital relationship. Now, there was a division bench judgment of the Delhi High Court in Amina Bharatram. Then there was also another judgment of a coordinate bench in Meenakshi Galod of the Delhi High Court. And there were two contrary judgments. So my submission to the court was that when we talk of 7(1)(d) of the Family Courts Act, in respect of an order for a suit or an injunction from a marital relationship, I said the word injunction includes anti-injunction. And my basis for saying so was the judgment of the Supreme Court in Modi Entertainment. Modi Entertainment is 2003 4 SCC 341. 2003 4 SCC 341, Modi Entertainment. I will, for the benefit of somebody who has missed out, again refer to the judgment I am expounding. This is Jasmeet Kaur versus Navdeep Singh. Jasmeet Kaur versus Navdeep Singh, Delhi High Court, 2017, SCC Online, Delhi. 2017 SCC Online, Delhi, 12511. So I referred to Modi Entertainment. Now, Modi Entertainment is the Bible of anti-injunction suits. Anti-injunction suits is principally an offshoot of commercial law. Now, in commercial matters, in contractual matters between two parties in two different jurisdictions, if parties have agreed to litigate in one jurisdiction and proceedings are launched simultaneously in two jurisdictions, the doctrine involved is doctrine of forum convenience, which is the most convenient forum to both the parties. And on the basis of that, the court, as a court of equity, decides where the litigation should go on. So, in Modi Entertainment, the Supreme Court says that the principles governing grant of an injunction is an equitable relief by a court, and it will also govern grant of anti-suit injunction, which is but a species of an injunction. So these are the key words. So an anti-injunction is actually a species or a part or a tributary or a corollary of a injunction. So Supreme Court says, when a court restrains a party to a suit or proceeding before it from instituting or prosecuting a case in another court, including a foreign court, it is called anti-suit injunction. It is common ground that courts in India have the power to issue anti-suit injunction to a party over whom it has personal jurisdiction in an appropriate case. This is because courts of equity exercise jurisdiction in personam, as Justice Mushtaq pointed out. However, having regard to the rule of comity, this power will be exercised sparingly, because such an injunction, though directed against a person, in effect causes interference in the exercise of jurisdiction by another court. So what I am reading to you is the judgment of the Supreme Court in Modi Entertainment, 2003. I just gave the citation, I'll repeat it. 2003, 4 SCC 341. So Modi Entertainment is actually, in a sense, the species of an injunction suit. Now, the Bombay High Court in Sandeep Kedia, SANDIP KEDIA, Sandeep Kedia, 2013 3 APR. This must be a Bombay reporter. APR. This judgment is cited in the Delhi High Court judgment. 2013 3 ABR 1380 says courts would act in exercising their inherent powers in the interest of justice to grant injunctions. So fallback is on 151 CPC. But I would also say 39 1 and 2. An anti-suit injunction application would fall only under the inherent power of the court and is consequently covered by precedent law. Now, I will develop this proposition to say that it is not 151 alone. It is 39 1 and 2 also, which governs the grant of an anti-suit injunction. Why do I say so? As I just read out to you, Section 10 of the Family Courts Act says that CPC will apply to it. So once CPC will apply to it, 39 1 and 2, the power to grant an injunction, I would think, would include a power to grant an anti-injunction. Because an anti-injunction, as I put it to you in my words, is a virus suit. You are injecting a virus through a suit to stop an ongoing suit. And therefore, the purpose is the same, whether it is injunction or anti-injunction. So I think the residuary power under 151, by virtue of a statute, would come in addition to 39 1 and 2, the substantive power, which is in part of the CPC. So, considering my submission of citing Modi Entertainment and Sandeep Kedia, the Delhi High Court said the court is of the view. Now, I am quoting the Delhi High Court judgment, Jasmeet Kaur, 2017, SCC Online, where they say in para 14, having heard the counsel of the parties, the court is of the view that the issue arises for consideration in the present application is whether an anti-injunction suit is covered under Section 7(1) of the Family Courts Act 1984. So the Honorable Judge has gone into this question of whether this is an issue which will be governed by 7(1). Now, the court says that ordinarily speaking, a civil suit, be it an injunction suit or be it an anti-injunction suit, arises out of a cause of action of a civil nature and will be governed by Section 9. And therefore, all injunctions, anti-injunctions, being of civil nature, have to be tried by a court, excepting suits of which jurisdiction is impliedly or expressly barred. So the language of Section 9 is picked up, and the court wants to see whether the jurisdiction of the court to entertain an anti-injunction suit is barred or is not barred. Now, here the court has gone into the issue that what is the language of section 7(1)(d), injunction or anti-injunction. Now the court is saying that once the court's jurisdiction, the Delhi High Court's jurisdiction is impliedly barred in all matters falling in the jurisdiction of the civil court, and the Delhi High Court being a part of it, the by necessary import, the definition would encompass an anti-injunction suit also. Now, the Delhi High Court had gone to the extent of issuing, in accordance with the procedure of the Delhi High Court, what is known as practice directions. Now, this is equivalent to something which is done by High Court rules also. So, the High Court of Delhi had actually issued practice directions. When you can't amend the rules, the Chief Justice, the Honorable Chief Justice, in consultation with the full court, issues what is known as practice directions. So these practice directions dated 23rd of December 2016 read, Honorable the Chief Justice, on recommendation of Honorable Judges, on the original side has been pleased to pass the following practice directions. So it says, in view of the judgment dated so-and-so and so-and-so, all matters enumerated in the explanation to subsection 1 of section 7 and section 8 of the Family Courts Act shall be exclusively triable by the family courts, and the jurisdiction of the High Court, to the extent it exercises ordinary original civil jurisdiction in respect of such matters, stands excluded by virtue of section 8 of the Act. So therefore, such matters listed before the High Court shall be transferred to the family courts. So effectively, it was said that though adjudication of pure civil rights in an injunction or an anti-injunction suit will be within the domain of the civil courts, yet in circumstances arising out of a marital relationship or guardianship or custody, wanting relief of anti-injunction or injunction, in line with section 9 CPC and in line with section 7 and 8, will go before the family court. So all anti-injunction suits will be tried under the special statute, that is Family Courts Act, and therefore the High Court would not take jurisdiction. So the High Court ultimately came to the conclusion there is only one conclusive division and judgment interpreting explanation D, and the High Court will not exercise original jurisdiction in anti-suit injunctions when the suit or proceedings for grant of an injunction lie before the family court. So whether you want an injunction or whether you want an anti-suit injunction, your jurisdiction is before the family court. So whether if you choose to go to the civil court will not grant you because the jurisdiction is barred. Now, in a similar breath, when Justice Mushtaq dealt with this matter of George Koshy versus Sarah Koshy, George Koshy versus Sarah Koshy, the judgment is in Matrimonial Appeal 497 of 2020. Matrimonial Appeal 497 of 2020, dated 9th of April 2021. Now, the issue here was that there was an anti-injunction suit before the family court, and the family court, without issuing notice, by a detailed order, dismissed the petition, saying it had no jurisdiction to entertain the petition. And that order of the family court was under challenge before the Kerala High Court, where Justice Mushtaq dealt with it beautifully. Now, his lordship says that, first of all, an anti-injunction suit is a species of an injunction. Then his lordship holds that parties in matrimonial matters may be entitled to different jurisdictions. Jurisdictions because of domicile or jurisdictions based on celebration of marriage. Then his lordship holds that courts in India, like the courts in England, are courts of equity. So his lordship then further says that courts of equity exercise jurisdiction in personam. Having regard to the rule of comity, this power will be exercised sparingly. Then his lordship explains how an anti-injunction suit is maintainable, citing a judgment of the Supreme Court. Then his lordship particularly refers to a judgment of Vivek Rai Gupta Vivek Rai Gupta, 2018, 17 SCC 21. 2018, 17 SCC 21. And the other judgment referred to is Madhavendra, 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 2021, 2 SCC 775, 2021 SCC 775. Now, both these judgments carry the import that an anti-injunction can be issued by a party, and in Vivek Rai Gupta specifically, the anti-injunction in matrimonial disputes is referred to. Now, there is another judgment of the Supreme Court which has brought out a totally different change of thought process. This is Dinesh Singh Thakur. This is Dinesh Singh Thakur, AIR 2018, AIR 2018, Supreme Court 2094. Dinesh Singh Thakur, AIR 2018, Supreme Court 2094. Now, this judgment brings about a complete thought process which is absolutely new. Now, following Narasimha Rao's original judgment by the Supreme Court in 1993, the perception was that only courts in India can dissolve a marriage solemnized according to the law applicable to the parties, i.e. their personal law. But Dinesh Singh Thakur has come in to say that when parties are domiciled abroad, courts in both countries have concurrent jurisdiction. And it cannot be presumed that a court, that is a foreign court, is wrongly exercising jurisdiction. So in this backdrop, Justice Mushtaq has referred to our judgment, our book, Global Indian in the Law, to expound what are anti-suit injunctions. So in the parlance of anti-suit injunctions in family court matters, what is the proposition? Now, the proposition very broadly is, to explain in my own words, you are married in India, you may be Indians, one person may be a foreigner, meaning you may be a non-Hindu, you may be a Christian, you may be a foreign national, or both parties are Indians to start with, or both parties have become foreign nationals. Now, after some time, both parties move abroad and settle down in a new country. Children are born, matrimonial disputes come, one of the spouses relocates back to India with the child, and a matrimonial litigation is started in two jurisdictions, one in the foreign country, one in the Indian country. Let us suppose a hypothetical situation. Both spouses initially participate in the matrimonial litigation in one jurisdiction. Some interim order is obtained in terms of child custody arrangements or starting of division of family property. In foreign jurisdictions, you can even start division of matrimonial property, divorce, or without actual matrimonial litigation. So let us suppose one of the spouses finds the litigation or the orders inconvenient. So the spouse abandons that litigation and moves back to India. That spouse, after coming to India, starts litigation in India. Now, it is in that perspective that the anti-injunction suit comes to say this is forum shopping. Now, the word forum shopping is very relevant here. You have not been successful in getting relief which you wanted in a foreign country. Therefore, you have come to India and you are trying your luck with some relief here. Then the spouse who has relocated to India moves an anti-injunction application saying, I want the spouse abroad to be stopped from continuing the litigation abroad. So what is in effect which is happening? The court is being asked to stop the party before it from litigating in a court abroad. Now, a court in India cannot stop another court in another country. So, the court in India can only stop a litigant before it, who is also a litigant in a foreign country in the same matter, in the same cause of action, on the same dispute, say child custody, say marriage. And it is in this perspective that an anti-injunction suit is asked from a court in India to stop the litigant before it from pursuing the parallel litigation abroad. Now, I have tried in a matter, ongoing matter in Bombay, this principle in the reverse. There are two parties who were married in Mumbai under the Special Marriage Act. They relocated to England. Their child was born in England. After matrimonial disputes, the wife relocated back to Mumbai and moved in with the child. The litigation for division of matrimonial assets had already begun in England, and she had participated in them briefly. But what she did after she came back, she has initiated a divorce petition at Mumbai to deal with the matter regarding their divorce and settlement of property and custody also. So I have tried a proposition in reverse. It has not been decided. I have moved an anti-suit injunction application in the family court in Mumbai saying this litigation should be stopped. That litigation commenced first. It is a convenient jurisdiction. She is represented by counsel. Forum convenience be applied. That court is already dealing with the matter. Multiplicity of proceedings will come. So this has become a two-way street. Now, going further with the discussion in the judgment of Justice Mushtaq, the court, the Kerala High Court Justice Mushtaq said that the explanation D to section 7.1 is talking of anti-injunction suits which are to be governed, which are to be adjudicated on the basis of the principle laid down in section 41 of the Specific Relief Act. So Justice Mushtaq in his judgment has said that the family court could not have said that it has no jurisdiction to deal with the matter, and therefore the Kerala High Court has set aside the judgment of the Family High Court and has directed the Family Court to register the matter afresh and proceed in accordance with the provisions or relating to grant of an injunction. So this is what this judgment has dealt with. Now, some broad principles which I have found from Modi Entertainment are, now Modi Entertainment says, the principles, Modi Entertainment is 19 AIR 2003, Supreme Court 1177. It says principles governing grant of an injunction and equitable relief by a court will also govern grant of anti-suit injunction, which is but a species of an injunction. The definition is, the Supreme Court says, where a court restrains a party to a suit or a proceeding before it from instituting or prosecuting a case in another court, including a foreign court, it is called anti-suit injunction. It is common ground that courts in India have the power to issue anti-suit injunction to a party over whom it has personal jurisdiction in appropriate cases. This is because the courts of equity exercise jurisdiction in personam. So this is broadly the fundamental principles of an anti-suit injunction. Now, the bottom line, therefore, is from what Delhi High Court says and from what Supreme Court says and what Bombay High Court says is the word anti-injunction is part of the word injunction. Now, the judgment in Sandeep Kedia of the Bombay High Court 2013-3 AIR Bombay 1380 say that the courts would act in exercising their inherent power in the interest of justice to grant an anti-suit injunction, and this will be available under the interim powers of the court. Now, the Bombay High Court also says the parameters of grant of such an injunction would have to be considered upon the law relating to grant of injunctions under the CPC, being Order 39, 1 and 2 and 151, and also Section 41 of the Specific Relief Act. Now, 41 is something we will come to later. Then it says, hence, this Honorable Court, that is the Bombay High Court, the exercise of jurisdiction vested under 71D of the Family Courts Act, read with Section 41 of the Specific Relief Act and Section 151 CPC, is entitled to grant an anti-suit injunction. This is because it says Section 10 of the Family Courts Act empowers the court to grant anti-injunctions. So it is further said that all injunctions, including anti-injunctions, are suits of a civil nature, proceedings of a civil nature, not barred by the jurisdiction of the family courts, but barred by the jurisdiction of the family court, are purely civil rights and would therefore are arising out of a matrimonial relationship and therefore would be governed. Now, Modi Entertainment has identified three principal factors which will govern the grant of an anti-suit injunction. So Modi Entertainment says, what are the three principles? One, in exercising discretion to grant an anti-suit injunction, the court must be satisfied of the following aspects. So we have now seen the inception, we have now seen the maintainability. Now we decide on merits, why and where should an anti-suit be granted. And for this, the three criteria, as I said, are: one, the defendant against whom the injunction is sought is amenable to the personal jurisdiction of the court. How would that be? That would be when the party is appearing as a respondent before the court itself. So the party in litigation in a foreign court is also a party in litigation before the court in India, is as a defendant. So therefore is amenable to the jurisdiction of the court. Second, if the injunction is declined, the ends of justice will be defeated and injustice will be perpetuated. So as in CPC we say, irreparable loss and injury, that is the so-called principle here. Ends of justice will be defeated and injustice will be perpetuated. Three, principle of comity, respect for the court, in which the commencement or continuance of action proceeding is sought can be restrained. Now, this is a principle which is resting on the comity of courts, respect to courts. Now, a court in India cannot dictate to a court abroad, and is likewise, but courts between each other can understand the language of unwritten law and say we will adhere to the norms of that court and therefore we will not act in these circumstances to grant any relief. Now, it is at this stage that we have to step into Section 41 and see what is Section 41 talking. Now, having seen that a suit for an injunction is also a suit for an anti-injunction, having gone into the maintainability, we now come to the issue of relief. It is a tough relief. It is a difficult relief. Why? Because the import, as Justice Mushtaq pointed out in the beginning, is a negative import. Section 41 a provision which we don't sometimes read, is the fulcrum of relief in anti-injunction suits. 41 reads an injunction cannot be granted. So it is a negative interpretation. You have to get out of the provisions of 41 exceptions to be entitled to the relief of an anti-injunction as also an injunction. So the first is, an injunction cannot be granted to restrain any person from prosecuting a judicial proceeding pending at the institution of the suit in which an injunction is sought, unless such restraint is necessary to prevent a multiplicity of proceedings. So basically, bottom line is, it should stop multiplicity of proceedings. Second is, to restrain any person from instituting or prosecuting any proceeding in a court not subordinate that from which the injunction is sought. So essentially, the court in which you want the injunction stopped should not be a subordinate court to the court in which the injunction is sought. Now, the question which has been examined by the Punjab Haryana High Court and upheld by the Supreme Court is 41A and B to be read together or to be read separately. 41A is multiplicity and 41B is subordinate court. Punjab Haryana High Court says you have to read both together. So you cannot read one in isolation from the other. Now, the other relevant part is we can skip C, D, E, F, G, which are not relevant. H, when equally efficacious relief can certainly be obtained by any other unusual mode, or of proceeding except in case of breach of trust. So this is the third exception which may be relevant in certain circumstances. Now, it is in this perspective that the judgment in Dinesh Singh Thakur, I will read out some paragraphs from it. Now, in judgment in Dinesh Singh Thakur, the issue was that parties had been married in India and had relocated to the US, where some proceedings started. The husband moved back to India, started some proceedings, sought anti-injunction against the proceedings in the US court, but these were declined. And in this circumstance, the matter first came to the High Court. Now, the judgment of the High Court is Dinesh Singh Thakur versus Sonal Thakur. Dinesh Singh Thakur versus Sonal Thakur. The relevant judgment will be the Supreme Court, but still, I would like to quote and rely upon some parts of the High Court judgment, because the High Court here said that the matter before the US court is much large. The matter before the US court was division of matrimonial assets, child support, alimony, partition. Now, insofar the matter instituted before the family court was concerned, all these reliefs had not been claimed, and the matter was only pertaining to divorce. So comparing the family court proceeding in India and the proceeding in the US, the High Court held that the relief sought in the court before the US was much more. And therefore, both parties being in the US, one having temporarily come to Gurgaon, the anti-injunction ought not to be granted because there was no relief sought. There was no irreparable injury to be caused. And in this situation, Section 41A was not satisfied and multiplicity of proceedings was to be maintained. So the court said the family court, the Punjab Haryana Court said the Family Courts Act 1984 does not contain any provision or principle with regard to grant of an injunction in case of a issue arising out of a marital relationship. So the High Court says, in absence of any such provision, the matter has to be dealt with under the provisions of the Specific Relief Act. So then the court examines 41A and 41B. 41A, I was told you, was multiplicity of proceedings, and 41B is subordinate courts. Now, the High Court said that the court in Florida is not a subordinate court to the court in Gurgaon. Therefore, the family court cannot grant an injunction. Now, the argument raised before the family court Gurgaon was that it is to prevent multiplicity of proceedings. So the High Court said, no, 41A and B have to be read together. You cannot read 41A in isolation, and therefore the High Court dismissed the grant for an anti-injunction, saying reading 41A and B together, this has to be declined. Now, when the matter went to Supreme Court, the Supreme Court expounded it to a much larger proposition. Now, the Supreme Court in this matter, in the Supreme Court, said that anti-injunction suits are meant to restrain a party from prosecuting in another court, including a proceeding in a foreign court. Then it is said that foreign court cannot be presumed to be exercising its jurisdiction wrongly, even after the appellant being able to prove that parties are governed by the law governing Hindus as Hindus in India in respect of the matter between them. Now, in Dinesh Singh Thakur versus Sonal Thakur, 2018, AIR 2018, Dinesh Singh Thakur versus Sonal Thakur, AIR 2018, Supreme Court 2094. The Supreme Court is saying, after discussing 41 of the Specific Relief Act and Modi Entertainment, now the Supreme Court also relying upon Narasimha Rao. Narasimha Rao is 1991, 3 SCC 451. Now the Supreme Court says there is no dispute that both the parties are permanent citizens of US. Undisputedly, Circuit Court Florida is also having the concurrent jurisdiction in the given case. I pause here for a minute. Now, Justice Mushtaq pointed out to you in the beginning that jurisdiction comes by virtue of application of personal law, or jurisdiction is attracted by domicile. Now, here is the Supreme Court for the first time in so many years saying there is concurrent jurisdiction in these matters. Second, the Supreme Court says there is nothing on record to show that the husband would suffer injustice if the injunction restraining the wife from pursuing the divorce in Florida is granted. Still further, injunction has to be declined because it cannot be said that the end of justice will be defeated and injustice will be perpetuated. So, Supreme Court has read 41A. Sorry, 41. Sorry, this is the language of Modi Entertainment. Now, the Supreme Court further says the contention of the respondent wife that the petition for divorce in USA on the ground of breakdown of marriage, that is irretrievable breakdown, requires consideration. Supreme Court says the mere fact that the respondent wife has filed a case on this ground, which is not available to her under the Hindu Marriage Act, doesn't mean that there are likelihood of being success if granted a decree. Such will be a question of evidence. Then Supreme Court says foreign court cannot be presumed to be exercising its jurisdiction wrongly, even after the appellant being able to prove that the parties in the present case are continued to be governed by Hindu law in the matter of dispute between them. So in the facts of the above case, the Supreme Court upheld the order of the Punjab and Haryana High Court. Now, two new things have come in this judgment. Number one, court in the US, the parties are domiciled, is a court of concurrent jurisdiction. Second, foreign court exercising jurisdiction cannot be said to be exercising its jurisdiction wrongly once parties are domiciled, even if the law to which they are entitled to is contrary to the law by which they were married. Now, it is in this circumstance and situation that the Supreme Court said no anti-suit injunction. So this gives us to show that an anti-injunction suit is a difficult relief. Now, in this breath, I also point out another judgment of the Punjab and Haryana High Court. This is Rakesh Kumar. Rakesh Kumar. Now, the judgment is 2017, Volume 1, 2017, Volume 1, PLR. PLR is Punjab Law Reporter, 806. Now, the Supreme Court here is commenting on the filing of the suit under Section 19 CPC. Now, Section 19 of CPC is talking about suit for movables being filed by a person where he is residing. So the court is saying that in terms of Section 19 CPC, court's husband cannot file the suit in India. Court has no jurisdiction. Then the High Court is saying the family court has no, in India, has no, family court in India has no jurisdiction to grant an interim injunction for restraining a person from instituting any proceeding in a court not subordinate to it. So the High Court said that the court in India cannot grant an injunction to a US court because the US court is not a subordinate court to the Indian family court. And therefore, in terms of Section 41(1)(b), A and B both, the injunction cannot be granted and the injunction was declined. So, following this import, it is again seen that the reading Section 41(a) and (b), the actual relief of an anti-injunction may be a difficult relief. Now, I come to another judgment of the Bombay High Court, dated 23rd of August 2021. Now, this is Milind versus Sheetal. Milind, I'm just giving the first name. Milind versus Sheetal. This is a decision in writ petition number 3773 of 2021, decided on 23rd of August 2021. This is a very recent judgment. Now, in this case, the Supreme Court has discussed Dinesh Singh Thakur. It has discussed Narasimha Rao. Now, this is a case where the husband is praying for an anti-injunction suit for restraining the wife from carrying on proceedings for matrimonial disputes in Australia. Now, parties are married in Mumbai. They move to Australia. Parties acquire a domicile of Australia. Disputes start, and parties litigate in both jurisdictions. Now, I'm going to read out an offshoot of what such litigation is bringing about is children. So the Bombay High Court, Justice Karnik, is on a very poignant note, starts an opening para by saying, I start with a narration which may not be completely relevant in the context of the decision in the present issue. I express this with a fond hope that the warring couple resolve their disputes amicably, and at the earliest keeping in mind that apart from the hardships the parties are facing, it is their minor son who is worst affected by this unfortunate estrangement. The minor is already a subject matter of a parenting agreement. Whether it is the foreign court or the Indian court, the parties must try to resolve the matter amicably. I have no manner of doubt that the parties will put the minor's interest above everything else and find an early resolution to the dispute. So, what is happening actually? These anti-injunction suits or forum shopping suits are being reduced to using children to settle matrimonial scores. Now, in this case, relying very heavily on Dinesh Singh Thakur, saying there are a foreign court is a court of concurrent jurisdiction, and husband has yet to establish that grave injustice will be caused. Now, the husband, after participating in the proceeding in Australia, came to Mumbai, appointed a power of attorney, and filed a suit for a divorce. And after filing a suit for a divorce, he sought an anti-injunction of the proceeding in Australia. Family court declined the injunction. Bombay High Court confirmed the order. So, what is the man effectively trying to do? He's trying to indulge in forum shopping. He is trying to obtain relief, which he thinks he will get in India, and he will avoid adverse orders in Australia, or he will stop the court in Australia from proceeding further with the matter. So, following this principle of law and the judgments in Dinesh Singh Thakur, the Supreme Court says that he is not entitled to an anti-suit injunction. Now, this is what is the long and short of anti-injunction. But now there is another judgment of the Supreme Court in Vivek versus Nayati, Niyati, Vivek versus Nayati, Niyati. And the citation is 2018, 17 SCC 21. 2018, 17 SCC. Sorry, I got lost. 2018, 17 SCC 21. Vivek versus Niyati, Niyati, 2018, 17 SCC 21. Now, in this case, parties lived in US. They had matrimonial disputes. The husband came to India, filed a petition in Mumbai, sought an anti-injunction. The petition was dismissed. High Court also dismissed it, but the Supreme Court issued notice and directed that the wife will not pursue proceedings in the US. But the wife went ahead and ultimately got a divorce decree on breakdown. Then, in a contempt petition, when she appeared before the Supreme Court, she said, I will not execute any of the orders. Now, the Supreme Court ultimately held that she has made a statement that she will not pursue any proceedings in India. And the Supreme Court said that ultimately in execution proceedings, this matter will be tested, whether foreign court judgment will apply or will not apply. And the issues will remain open in view of the test laid down in Section 13 CPC. So this was again to see that if an anti-injunction was violated, what would be the end. So this is what anti-injunction suits is all about. And this is what I have been able to dig up as a compilation of law through which this jurisprudential concept has evolved over a passage of time. It is not guided by any statute in as much of clear principles. It is evolving through law interpreted by the bench as it is. But I think for a start, Justice Mushtaq's judgment telling the court jurisdiction and relief are two different issues. You have the jurisdiction to take a call. You have to decide it. Whether you grant relief or not is a subsequent matter. Now, in that context, the most latest judgment of the Supreme Court in Lohiya's case, Justice Khanwilkar has very well expounded the whole issue to say you cannot abort the substantive procedure of the Family Courts Act. You are not a writ court that you can say dismissed. You have to have a WS, you have to have issues, you have to have evidence, and then you can go on maintainability. So this is the broad gist of the whole issue. Now I leave the floor open. Questions and observations. Back to you, Shah.
Thank you, Malhotra sir. Beautifully presented. I'm sure that doubts may not linger in the sense, but queries will be there. May I just get the remarks from Justice Mustaq sir first?
Thank you, Malhotra. That's every aspect related to the issue, and a practicing lawyer should know about it. As I said earlier, in Kerala, we seldom used the anti-suit as against any other person and invoke the jurisdiction of the court. So it is sometime we may have to, because that is, as Malhotra pointed out, there would be a situation where the parties may involved in a foreign shopping, and that has to be prevented. That is a situation where the court also has to be very alert and grant such relief. I think we need not confine the anti-suit injunction broadly in the scenario of arbitration or the family court. It may happen in many situations where action in person is sought, because probably we, as a litigating lawyers, must be only involved in invoking a suit price in only in matters related to the immovable property, and we hardly use injunction as a relief in action in person. It is for the lawyers to evolve the jurisprudence and proposition line, and it's a great opening for young lawyers at least to know about scope of using anti-injunction suits in the court. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And over to you, Justice Ramesh, sir.
As rightly pointed out by Justice Mustaq and Anil Malhotra, first of all, the courts must understand whether the suit is maintainable first. Maintainability and granting relief is entirely different. Jurisdiction is also one of the part of it. Unless you are able to throw it under Order 7, Rule 11, I don't think that any suit of civil nature which is governed under Section 9 can be entertained by the family court also, because it is a substitute for a civil court in respect of matrimonial disputes. That's fundamental principle. If it is understood, then there is no difficulty. And second, as rightly said, you can also invoke the principles related on Section 10 of the CPC also for stay of suits between the same parties, whether it is in anti-injunction or a regular injunction, whatever be the suit. When there is a possibility of divergent findings being issued, or there is a possibility of misuse of one court's jurisdiction for the purpose of getting a favorable relief, as forum. I don't want to say that a forum shopping, but there is a sophisticated word that is being used to malign the this court. But I will say that they're getting a favorable orders, depending upon the bench or depending upon the judges. So it is always better, because even we find experiencing the same thing when you similar type of petitions are filed before changing the jurisdictional court, the roster, that things are happening. And unfortunately, another thing is, when such things are happening, it is for the registry or the court master to brought to the notice of the jurisdictional, the master court or the court, so that such a decision has been rendered by the other court. Such things are not nowadays happening, because even the court staffs are not equipped with what is going on around them. So this is an area where it is a facting thing, because I think the Mustaq, now being a sitting judge, must be able to train the court staff, because earlier the court staff may be knowing what is going around inside the court in other courts also, because almost all court staffs are the court masters are LLB people. So they are expected to follow the decision that is being rendered in different courts of the same complex, I can say, because High Court is one complex where different courts are sitting, that's all, of different jurisdiction. So if that is adopted, I don't think there will be any difficulty for the inconsistency being coming on a particular issues. One. So this is the area where I will have to say that we will have to train ourselves to find out what is going on around us. Also, we will have to think about any decisions has been rendered in a similar matter in a different jurisdiction. But out of context or context, you will have to, if it is brought to your notice, if it is also referred to in the decision, then there is no conflicting decision arises. You can refer to a larger bench, and that can be decided by a larger bench. So that practice will have to be, once that practice adopted, I think that the inconsistency in the decisions may also go up. And also, as rightly said, these are the areas where the people are not understanding the fundamentals of maintainability, jurisdiction, and all the other things, whether you are entitled to relief, get a relief, etc., on the basis of the pleadings. And also, after getting their views only, you will be able to come to a conclusion as to whether anti-suit injunction can be granted or not, whether it will cause prejudice or irreparable injury will be caused, or you cannot be compensated with any other thing, as rightly said by Anil Malhotra under Order 39, Rule 1 and 2. So these are all the basic principles which will have to be understood by the judges who are deciding those issues. Because only thing is, on going through the decisions and also the lecture by Anil Malhotra, one thing is sure, no court has come to the conclusion that suit is not maintainable. Everything depends upon the facts. So, first of all, the family court at the threshold itself are not expected to dismiss the suit saying that it is not maintainable. You will have to issue notice whether you are granting an interim injunction or not. That's a different thing. The suit can be entertained and opportunity can be given for other party to come, unless you are so sure on the basis of the documents produced that certain reliefs have been already obtained by the husband or the wife, whoever be in the foreign court. In order to overcome that, and the ingenious method of choosing another court in India to harass that person to bring here and also to meet the situation is palpable on the basis of pleading itself, then it's a different thing. So everything depends upon the pleadings made, the documents produced, and the courts are also heard. Even the Supreme Court has said we cannot simply say that there is no jurisdiction or there is no, it is not maintainable, but everything will be, as rightly said, because Order 41, the Order 40, 41, where injunction can be granted and when cannot be granted, and also Order 39, everything deals, Section 30, specifically everything says only under what circumstances you can entitled to grant an injunction, and what circumstances you are not. Everything depends upon fact. They are not providing any law as such, but they say what is to be governed and how you will have to decide it. There is a principle that has been provided. That principle will have to be evolved in each case depending upon the facts and also circumstances. Thank you very much for enlightenment on this subject, Mr. Anglum.
Thank you, Ramachandran sir. We recognize the presence of Justice P.S. Narayana sir. Also, there is some connectivity issue. He is not able to connect the audio. Malhotra sir, and in this context, I believe that Gangabai versus Vijay Kumar, the AR 1974 decision, I think AR 1974 Supreme Court 1126, where it has been held, there is an inherent right in every person to bring a suit of a civil nature, and unless the suit is barred by statute, one may at one's peril bring a suit of one's choice. And it's further held that it is no answer to a suit, however frivolous the claim. The law confers no such right to sue. A suit for its maintainability requires no authority of law, and it is enough that no statute bars the suit. So I would request Dilip sir to put the next question.
Good morning, sir. So my question is, now we heard about the jurisdiction, the relief, pendency, etc., institution of the. Now, what lingers in my mind is, who is entitled to file an anti-suit injunction? Is it the petitioner in the previous proceeding or the respondent?
See, it is invariably the petitioner who is.
It has to be the petitioner. Otherwise, the person who is the respondent, if he is allowed to file a suit for anti-suit injunction, then he will be creating multiplicity of proceedings.
See, no, I would put it differently. Now, you are a respondent in a foreign court proceeding.
Yes.
You have got some relief granted against you in the foreign court.
Yes.
Now, you have not been able to dislodge that relief.
Yes.
So, what do? You come to India and you initiate a matrimonial proceeding like a divorce petition. So there is a division of matrimonial assets petition
Yes.
in, let us say, in Australia. I'm facing this situation now. So what do? You can't dislodge it. So you come to India and you file a divorce petition. And you, after filing the divorce petition, you are obviously the petitioner or the plaintiff in India, but you are the defendant abroad.
Yes.
So as defendant abroad, you come here and become the plaintiff and say, no, we are Hindus. Hindu law will apply to us. Therefore, please stop the foreign court from adjudicating. Now, this is where Justice Mushtaq pointed out to you a basic jurisprudential aspect, that jurisdiction comes by personal law, but jurisdiction comes by domicile.
Yes.
Now, the foreign court has taken jurisdiction on you by virtue of your domicile, by virtue of your current status of residence and nationality. So, therefore, an anti-injunction in India ought to fail for
Yes.
the simple reason that there is no that you are creating multiplicity,
That is what I said.
and we cannot restrain a foreign court from pursuing. So 41A and B will dislodge you.
And also, if at all he files a proceeding, not an anti-injunction, if at all he files a proceeding before a family court in India, then Section 10 will apply. Section 10 of CPCB will apply.
But at the same time, see, even a petitioner can come in. Now, let us suppose the petitioner has obtained relief in the foreign court.
Yes.
The respondent the relief has been obtained, but the subsequent to the filing of the suit in the foreign jurisdiction, the respondent comes and files a suit in India.
Yes.
The petitioner from the foreign country comes to Bombay or India and files as a petitioner or a plaintiff a suit for anti-injunction and say, oh, this person is already before the foreign court, committee of court requires to stop. So there is no hard and fast rule. Whether you are petitioner or respondent, you are interchangeable.
There may be different situation. Like, for example, parties might have married from India. So naturally, the personal law, the law of the status of the celebration would apply. But after the marriage, parties might have migrated to New Zealand or Canada, and both parties were residing and might have acquired nationality as well. But one party, much before the divorce proceedings initiated, came back to India and settled, for example.
Yes.
Then problem arises. The other party might be a nationality. For example, as a wife is in a nationality of Canada. She is a domicile there. She
Yes.
might institute proceedings in a Canadian court. But husband might have come back to India
Yeah.
much before the proceedings of initiated. So now he being proceeded for divorce in Canada. Now he can very well sue in India against her.
That is there.
Because
That
suppose Canadian court grants him a divorce, he doesn't want to have suppose he doesn't want a right, he wants to proceed with the restitution of conjugal rights.
Yes.
He will have a jurisdiction in Indian courts because for the reason that marriage took place in India.
Yes.
So Canadian jurisdiction may allow a person who may having domicile to institute proceeding before the Canada. So there would be two different proceedings. Now, husband may not be interested to go back to Canada.
Yes.
So
Yes.
such a situation may happen.
If the husband
So
apprehensive proceeding in future before the other court, then he is entitled to sue here for anti-injunction. But
Yes.
once he is a respondent there, he may not be allowed to file, or he cannot file, according to me, he cannot file an anti-suit injunction here, saying that suit has to be.
No, he's not. Preventing the suit. He is actually preventing a person from proceeding with a suit in a foreign country.
Then he is the person who is creating multiplicity of proceedings.
No,
Maybe-
Dilip, I'm sorry. In the other one, he has not participated. Like Mushtaq sir said, before the proceedings initiated, he was here. Just because he's arrayed as the respondent, then what is the purpose of an anti-suit?
So he has to prevent some hardship may occur to. Suppose he wants to institute a proceedings here in India for a restitution of conjugal rights, assuming, or some other proceedings.
Yes.
So he wants to see that he may not be able to go back to Canada defend a case. Of course, let it section 13 and all other, it comes on later part, only in terms of enforcement. Now he wants to prevent a person from proceeding a suit in a foreign country because he now domiciled in India, other parties in domiciled in Canada.
Yes. I understand.
Both assuming A is the husband, B is the wife, both were residing in Canada. Both might have acquired nationality also.
Yes.
The jurisdiction is not based on the nationality, but domicile. And much before initiating proceedings before divorce, A came back to India and settled. He is permanently residing here. He is domiciled in here. Wife might be instituting his proceedings in Canada for a divorce. Because she is a domicile there. Marriage might have taken place in India.
Yeah. In India.
So there may be such situation, but much of a hardship may also cause and multiplicity of proceedings because both countries' court will have a jurisdiction based on the principles related to law of celebrations as well as based on the law of domicile. But other party may not. One party who's opposite party in Canada may not have the domicile there.
I just wanted to clarify that doubt, whether who is entitled to file an application prior to or after the pendency or after the...
Any even apprehending a suit, he can file a...
Yes, anti-suit in them.
And just to add what Justice Mushtaq has very rightly explained to you, you are not able to go, you don't get a visa. There is a reported judgment in Harmita Singh's case by the Delhi High Court, 2003 to RCR 197. 2003 to RCR 197. I'll repeat. 2003 to RCR 197, Harmita Singh, where an anti-injunction was granted by the Delhi High Court saying the wife can't go there. She can't get a visa. She hasn't participated. So anti-injunction was granted. So there is no hard and fast rule. It's going to be dependent on the facts of the case.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Dilip sir. We have Vaibhav with a question. Vaibhav, please.
Before that, I want to clarify one aspect from clarification. Suppose they have forgone the citizenship here and acquired citizenship in the foreign country.
But where is the domicile?
Nationality principles will not mostly apply in private international law, sphere of law. National principles only apply in public international law. So that's where the
carry your personal law wherever you go.
Yes.
Yeah, private international. Yes, that's what private international law says.
Extraterritorial application. You carry your Hindu law on your back, whether you're German, Canadian, whatever.
More or less like a hermit crab. You carry it along with you.
Nationality principle may not have an application in such situations. Whether you are a Canadian national or Australian national.
No, because except the fact that we are getting some idea of private international and public international in the law colleges, on practicals we are not getting
exactly. This is what problem. So Hindu law itself says about the private international law. Hindu carries back the law and was back. That means it carries as far as the private affairs of Hindu is concerned, is governed by such law. That is the reason in section 13, if a foreign judgment has been given in accordance with the personal law of the parties, that would have a binding effect in the country.
Yes.
But we don't read section 1. That is where the whole crunch is. Hindu Marriage Act will apply to Hindus domiciled in the territories to which the act extend who are outside the said territories. So the extraterritorial application is inbuilt. So I carry my Hindu law in my pocket. And as Justice Mushtaq very rightly pointed out, nationality doesn't matter. And there is a decision of the Supreme Court in Sundar Gopal versus Sundar Ragini, differing with the Bombay High Court on this purpose.
This I put only for the purpose of enlighten the younger generation to know about it.
only a man who has been on the bench can expound this with more clarity with the assistance of a sitting honorable judge.
Malhotra sir, one question that has come up is that in this context, Hindus married as per Hindu rights in India goes to the Middle East. Under the Sharia law, they obtain a divorce. Is that divorce valid?
No, you can't, sir. That will not. I don't think this will straight away go, because some people try to convert to Muslim religion.
no, here they put it in bracket, no conversion, but gave an undertaking that they accept the law of that country for divorce. Is it possible?
See, in Dubai, as I know, you have an option to be governed by Sharia law. You have an option to be governed by law not applicable to locals. So it's a very mixed situation. Justice Mushtaq may be able to expound on it better, but you may be divorced in Dubai, but you will be married in India. This is the conflict.
I think of course, there is a bilateral agreement between India and the UAE, where which India, it is a deemed decree. But nevertheless, if it can't stand the test of Section 13 or 44A of CPC, it cannot be enforced in India.
And then your law will come in, because under Section 13, if it is not according to the law of India or the law applicable to parties, it will go straight away.
Yes.
Bottom line is, Hindus can't divorce under Muslim law. No.
Yes.
So, Shyam, if you are exploring by a dubious...
No, sir, I'm not exploring any possibility, because I like to go under the Special Marriage Act. My wife is a Christian. That'll be different.
She is not a foreign. She is not a foreign.
Maybe he tried to couch the question with religious cover. It will not succeed, Shyam.
I think
not at this age.
This is often happens because many Keralites are in UAE. They approach Sharia court and get divorced in accordance with the law that is applicable in UAE. So for them, it is quite, your views expressed here would be quite useful in a sense. Such decree cannot be enforced in India, and they continue to be in marital tie unless and until the divorce happened in accordance with the law recognized by India.
So your position will be you're divorced elsewhere but married in India.
Yes. Limping marriages.
My God, the operation successful, but the patient died. So we'll take a question from Vaibhav Kanokar. Vaibhav, please. Unmute and shoot.
Vaibhav, you unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. First of all, I'm immensely thankful to you for devoting your time and energy. And it was a wonderful lecture.
Justice Mushtaq is the propagating. He is the one who has authored the judgment which has ignited the discussion.
I'm thankful to Mr. Shyam sir also. Okay. My question here is that I am not very much, have not spent too many years into practice. The trend that I generally observe is when you move an application for injunction, why is it necessary that suppose the mother-in-law is trying to restrain the entry of her daughter-in-law? Why is it a practice that even the son is made a party? This query always came to my mind. Besides, if there is a matrimonial dispute going on in family court between the son and daughter-in-law, can the mother-in-law at the same time approach a district court for injunction only against daughter-in-law? Is it maintainable?
See, mother-in-law can't be a party to the matrimonial litigation because she is not a party to the marriage. So she has to go to the civil court. Now, the civil judge on the facts of the case has to take a call whether she has a case for an injunction or not. And I think to a great extent, the Maintenance of Senior Citizens Act, this act has come in now, which entitles senior citizens to get summary relief by a shortcut procedure. So, to a great extent, the problem has been resolved because the issue of residing in the property when the mother-in-law is thrown out or the parent has been thrown out comes up. And then the injunction is required as a matter of necessity because a person is roofless. I think it is a call to be taken on the facts of the case.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Radhakrishna Murthy, please.
Yes, sir. Actually, I am thankful to everyone. Like, this is a very good session. And Malhotra sir actually enlightened many things like in respect of this injunction, restraint injunction and all. Though we have been practicing since so many years and all, we have not come across. This is a good subject wherein today we have learned. But my point, one question, sir. Actually, the wife and husband that they are residing in US, due to some disputes and all that they came back to India, and when they came back to India, husband has filed for divorce. Okay. before receipt of the summons and all, she came to know that and all. Immediately she left for USA. There that she has filed a maintenance case. So now whether the husband can move this restraint injunction application
think
to stall the proceedings of MC.
if she is served, he can move the application before the court in India itself. Or if the husband wants, he can move the application before the US court, saying that this litigation is prior in point of time, and the principle of comity of courts would come. But as Justice Mushtaq would point out,
No, there can't be any because the points are entirely different. No, here actually he has instituted for divorce, but whereas there she has instituted for maintenance case. Okay, she has not filed for divorce.
The issue is, can she not, in a more idea is multiplicity of proceedings, can she not prevent multiplicity of proceedings by claiming maintenance to defend the divorce petition in India itself? Where does she want maintenance to maintain herself? In India, in US? Is she earning? Is she not earning? Where are they domiciled? There would be a lot of factors which would show. Suppose if they have relocated permanently, then there is no question of going to the US to claim maintenance.
No, they have not relocated. Basically, that on a dispute and all that they have come down. Thereafter, because of the dispute and all, the husband that he has not moved back to US, but he has instituted because of the what we call the virtual mode and all. But now he is working from home, but whereas his job, everything is from US only.
So you see,
So can he move an application here? This restraint injunction.
The husband can move an application before the court in India that she should be restrained from proceeding. But again, you will have to satisfy the test of Modi Entertainment, the triple test.
I think he is asking a question. The husband is temporarily residing in India.
Yes.
In fact, he is not domiciled in India. If he has no intention to stay here permanently, one cannot be said to have a domicile. So if he has come for India and he could not go back for some reasons and he is working from home, such person cannot be said to have a domicile in India. So
No, he is a citizen of India and the marriage took place at India only. So this court has a jurisdiction. There is no doubt about it.
See, the maintenance matter, I think it's private international law would lean in favor of the parties are where the place where the courts would the place where the parties are having domicile. The question is whether merely because they are married for India, the court should not entertain a claim for a maintenance.
No, not maintenance. I said he has filed for divorce.
Yeah.
She has filed for maintenance at US court.
She has maintained, correct. If the parties are having domicile in foreign court,
Yes,
certainly she would be justified in moving that foreign court for a maintenance.
yes.
And merely because his husband is now temporarily staying in India will not prevent from prosecuting that maintenance case in foreign jurisdiction. Because you have to, the maintenance case, you have to consider the domicile as a factor for conferring the jurisdiction.
Not only that, there another thing is also there. She is claiming maintenance because she is not able to maintain herself. Asking her to come to India to file a suit for pittance of maintenance amount. Maybe in a foreign country she may get a fabulous amount.
No,
But when you
there
come to
actually the
India,
law is little bit different.
when you come to India, what will be the amount that likely to be get?
Correct, sir.
And
Sir, we'll take the last question from Geopol and
just
we'll move
one
forward.
moment. This is another question. I want you to see the triple test in Modi Entertainment. One, defendant against whom the injunction is sought is amenable to the personal jurisdiction of the court. So if she is not amenable to the personal jurisdiction because she is domiciled in the US, you will go straight away. Second, if the injunction is declined, acts will be defeated, injustice will be perpetuated. This is also not satisfied. Principle of comity of courts. This is also not satisfied. So on Modi Entertainment, the anti-injunction suit will fail.
Judgment can I make?
Modi Entertainment,
Modi entertainment. Okay.
triple test everywhere.
Thank you, Murthy sir. And we move on to Geopol, please.
Thank you so much for the excellent session, Malhotra sir and Justice Mushtaq. I'm afraid whether the position that if parties are in UAE and if both of them subject themselves to the jurisdiction of the Sharia law, then I am afraid whether that decree is valid in India. There are some of the judgments of our own High Court which says about that. Because I'm at home, I don't have the privilege of having having the books, I cannot say, but there are judgments which says if parties voluntarily subjects themselves to the jurisdiction, then that is a valid decree. It is not a valid decree if not one of the party is not participating in the proceedings. That is one doubt that I have.
Yes, if the parties are married in accordance to the personal law in India, as far as the divorce is concerned, that personal law would govern them. Maybe the validity of decree, the decree may be valid in in UAE, not valid in India.
Valid in India.
It cannot stand the test under section 13 of CPC as well as under 44A.
Because under what law you got married, you will have to get divorced. I think that
Yes.
might be the bottom line.
Yes,
Not only that, the consent does not confer jurisdiction.
yes.
The Bible on
And
this
then
subject the Bible on this subject is Narasimha Rao's case, 1991 Supreme Court.
1991.
1991 Supreme Court contains the exceptions because that was the case in which there was a foreign court decree and Supreme Court expounded where are the exceptions. It is very difficult to fit in the exceptions. It has been further explained. I was an amicus in Rupak Rathi versus Anita Chaudhary, where we have watered down to explain how difficult it is. It's quite unlikely actually, because you can come and reopen everything here. And if the husband comes and says, no, we are already divorced, then the family court says, no, we will go into the merits of the matter. We can't throw you out summarily. 711 doesn't succeed. This is catch-22.
One more aspect which I would like to mention is, sir, you are all talking about anti-injunction suits and the probability of forum buying and of course intentionally causing inconvenience to the other side. Is it not possible by some judgment, by some precedents that you can insist for an affidavits of the party who approaches a court that they have not approached any other forum, they have not obtained any other order, or such kind of affidavits would
That might require legislative intervention.
There is there is already a provision that the petitioner has not invoked the jurisdiction of any other honorable court.
Exactly.
Matter. See, that undertaking is already there implicitly.
There in the pleadings.
Not only that, whenever you are filing a suit, you will have to mention that for the same relief, I have not filed any suit anywhere.
If you see, normally to detect this, there are softwares in every court now. I wanted to point out to Justice Ramakrishnan, there is a software which checks on the numbers and the names. And if there is something and the registry attaches a note, it is dismissed with heavy cost. So if you mislead the court, the other party will point out, then you will go outright, finish. Then all temporary relief lost, cost, and you mislead the court, you suffer the consequence.
Anil Mutraji, everything depends upon who is appearing on the other side. Suppose he is well equipped with all weapons, you will get a better decision.
This discussion will take place when Justice Mustaq is not there. This discussion of this subject is forbidden.
Sometimes even because I had a better experience when I was a district judge. I have gone through certain decisions on the basis of the digest. At that time, I don't think that your technology has not improved that much. On the basis of old digest, which was available in the courts, normally it will not be substituted with the new ones. But I relied on that basis and gave some advice to my subordinate judge who came and discussed about a particular aspect. But ultimately, relying on that, the decision was rendered. And subsequently, when I discussed with the academy for some purpose, then I asked for this. Then he said that decision is overruled, sir. So that may happen to us also sometimes.
Malhotra sir, one last question before we go to the concluding remarks. Yes. Cannot the wife, after filing a suit for divorce in Canada, file an anti-suit injunction in India against the husband domiciled in India against filing a petition for restitution of conjugal rights?
See, it depends on whether the husband has participated in the US, in that country or not. Suppose the husband has not at all participated. Suppose the husband has not at all participated, she has gone through. Then of course he has a chance. But if he has participated, lost,
I think she can file a suit in India based on the law of celebration, because the marriage has taken place in India. But whether relief can be granted or not depends upon the facts. That's what.
Absolutely, sir.
So, following Justice Ramakrishna's view, the judge has to decide the face of the petitioner, and
Yes.
depending on the good-looking face, he has to give the relief.
Opponent
How you mold the pleading in the application for maintainability at the threshold? That is the only guideline, unless it is expressly barred by any other statute.
And in fact, the other day, in an argument before Justice Mustaq's court, beautiful wife or beautiful wife, the question came up. So it is just like that. When you say somebody says beautiful wife, is it beautiful also? We'll have to think. So as we come to the end of the 238th session, may I request KVJ Rao sir to give the concluding remarks.
Anil Malhotra sir, excellent as usual. Par excellence, I should say. And we should thank Justice Mushtaq for having lit this fire. The tandoori was good. The feast was very good. And I would
Lighting the fire and bringing the fireman also.
yes. And I would like to, on a lighter note, answer Shyam sir's question. Age is not a factor. The mind and body is what should be considering. Because in my field, 65 to 21 is a normal thing, the ratio. So that couldn't be the factor. However, having said that, an excellent session. And as usual, this platform churns out the best in far as dialogues are concerned and as far as questions are concerned, the solutions that are there, taking into consideration the multifaceted litigation that we are talking about. It is really good because this anti-injunction is something new that's come up now. I mean, everybody's trying it now because one has been successful. So how far another person will be successful, the same formula may not apply to everybody. So the churning will actually give ideas as to what will succeed and what may not succeed. The probabilities of preponderance, as we say. So having said that, sir, an excellent session, a morning well spent.
I think some connectivity issue.
But you should also tell him that this is an anti-program suit. This was not of the program. This session was cooked up
Sir, once
yesterday.
again for this platform. I'm sorry, sir.
Yeah, you were lost for a couple of seconds.
I'm
Now,
sorry.
just to tell you,
If you were saying something good about me, you can repeat that. Otherwise, forget about that.
Sir, this was an anti-program session. This session was called up on SOS emergency ground on a direction issued by our KVC, Letters, Mr. Padman.
Yeah.
Because there was a default. So the best things are turned out with the best of circumstances under pressure. So this was a thought emerging, and we requested Justice Mushtaq, and Justice Mushtaq actually brought in a lot of thought perception, which has helped to shape a lot of views, which I think is that judgment of Justice Mushtaq in 12 paras in 2 pages should be circulated to all the family courts in India, so that they realize that there is a lot of difference between jurisdiction and there is a lot of difference between relief. They are 2 different things.
Shyam sir, to put it very succinctly, that nothing bad can be said about you. Because having created this platform and held it together for so long is an achievement by itself, sir. So to put something bad in perspective, I would be demeaning myself more than I would be demeaning you. And I wouldn't want to be in that situation.
He has a new name today, Amitabh Bachchan of Letters.
Yes.
Jingle is Kaun Banega Gyanpati.
Thank you all. And as we come to the end of the session, thank you for the kind words. And it is this extended family that invigorates and the kind of debate that is had in this platform is only because of the quality of the participants, their dedication to this program, and that drives us on. And let us start thanking Justice Mohammad Mushtaq sir, because he not only introduced the subject today, in fact, he was instrumental in getting Anil Malhotra sir into this platform. And Anil Malhotra sir, as we started off earlier, when we said he has been adopted, or rather he has adopted us into his family. Like, I mean, it's been a wonderful experience moving with him and sharing his thoughts and ideas on this wonderful subject. His in-depth knowledge of this is being shared with us. We are indeed indebted to you, Anil Malhotra sir. And we are also thankful to Justice Ramakrishnan sir and Justice P.S. Narayana sir for the valuable presence, and all of you, wonderful participants, for being part and parcel of this 238th session. So till we meet again in the next session, next Saturday, that again, we'll have Anil Malhotra sir, and sharing the platform with him will be Justice Dias of the Kerala High Court. And let us, till then, please do take care and stay safe. Thank you. Have a wonderful Sunday.
Thank you, Mr. Sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, sir. Grateful, sir. Thank you.